Hi guys. Okay, so tonight's video is going to be about reviewing multiplication and dividing of integers. So remember, when we're talking integers, we're talking about numbers that can be positive or negative. Okay, so you guys should have this toolbox inside your notebook already, but we're not going to do the problems that you have in your notebook. So go ahead and just copy down these problems, and at the top of your page, copy down the triangle, and then make sure you add your negative signs in the bottom corners and your positive sign in the top corner. Okay? Perfect. So we're going to go ahead and start. Make sure you pause your video as you need to write down any information that you need. So we're going to start with the first problem here. Here I have 2. Now remember, we're in middle school, so we're either going to use parentheses. Oops, sorry about that. We're either going to use parentheses or we're going to use a dot to signify multiplication. So this should actually just be a dot, and we are multiplying. We could also just use parentheses, but since that X is there, I'm going to cover it up and use the dot. All right, so our first problem, what it looks like is this is 2 times a negative 3. So in order to find out, before we even do any multiplying, we're going to find out if it's going to be a negative or positive answer. So this is a positive, right? So we're going to go ahead and cover up. I'm going to cross off the positive. And my next number is negative, so I'm going to cover up or cross off in this instance the negative. What I'm left with is a negative number, so that tells me my answer to this multiplication problem is going to be negative. Okay, so I'm going to say 2 times 3 is, so I'm going to put my 6 there. Right, that makes sense? So I'm going to go ahead and erase these because we're going to use this. You should be crossing off. You should just be covering up the signs with your fingers. And we're going to try this again. So my next number here, I have a negative 2. So I'm going to cover up. You guys are covering up, not crossing off. My first negative. This one here is a positive, so I'm going to cover up my positive. So that tells me my answer is going to be positive or negative. So I'm going to put my negative sign. This is 2 times 4. 2 times 4 is, so we'll put our 8 there. So that is multiplying integers, negative and positive integers in a nutshell. This little triangle here, make sure you're just covering up and not crossing off like me. I can't put my fingers on there, so I'm covering them up by crossing them off. Okay. So the next one that we're going to work on now is division. And division follows the same rules, right? So if we have a negative 6, we're going to cover up our negative. And we're dividing by a positive 2. So we're going to cover up my positive. That still leaves me with a negative, so my answer will be negative. 6 divided by 2 is, and you're going to put your answer after the negative sign. So the next page, we have some samples, and I want you to take a few minutes, pause the video, copy them down, and see if you can solve them using the triangle method. And I'm just going to draw my own triangle down here. And here we have my negatives, and here we have my positives. So draw your triangle, copy down the problems, and take the next 5 minutes or so to try them on your own. So let's go ahead and check. I have a negative and a positive, negative and a positive. Oh, wait a minute. Well, what is 3 times 0? Anything times 0 is going to be 0, right? Does a 0 have a negative or positive? It doesn't. So 0 is just going to be 0 all by itself. We don't have to say a negative 0. There's no such thing as a negative 0. Now here we have 2 numbers. We have a negative and a negative. So if I cover both of these, that leaves me with a positive. So I know my answer is going to be positive. So 3 times 2 is 6. Oh, let's not forget to write these down with points or little dots here or parentheses and not use the X. We don't use the X because we're going to use X when we're looking at algebra in a bit. So again, negative plus and a negative. If I cover over both my negatives, it leaves me with a positive. So I know my answer is going to be positive something. So 2 times 4 is positive 8. What if they're both positive? There's only one positive. So if they're both positive, we have, let's say we have 8 times 8. We only have one positive, so what happens? That's because we don't really, that rule doesn't apply. We know when two things are positive, the answer is always going to be positive. Okay? So now I have division. I have 6 divided by 2. Same rule. I have a positive 6 and a negative 2. So if I cross off or cover up these two, my answer is going to be negative. So I can just write my negative. 6 divided by 2 is, and we just write our answer there, 3, negative 3. Have a positive divided by a positive. Remember, we don't have to do the triangle method. We just know that a positive divided by a positive, any positive stays positive. So 8 divided by 2 is going to be positive 4. But here I have 2 negatives, and I do have 2 negatives down here, so I can cover up both my negatives. So a negative divided by a negative is also going to give me a positive. 8 divided by 2, or negative 8 divided by 2, is still positive 4. So that's it for tonight. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Tomorrow we will do the back side of your worksheet. Please don't go ahead. Wait until we get into class tomorrow to work on it together. Have a great one.